Hello and welcome to this afternoon's program for Collector House Classroom. It is such a nice opportunity to get to share with you a 1-hour presentation on photographs at Sotheby's, and I know that we will have a nice time enjoying the presentation. So a couple announcements. I am Jennifer Klos, and I'm an art advisor based in Dallas. And I was formerly a curator at the Oklahoma City Museum of Art for 8 years, and I then went on to launch my business in art advisory here in Dallas 4 years ago. So today's speaker, I'm honored to have Emily Bierman with us, head of photographs at Sotheby's. Hi, Emily.
Hi.
It is such a nice opportunity to get to share your expertise with our group today and to get to see highlights of your upcoming 2 sales. Well, they're currently already started, so the current sales. I would like to especially thank Charlie Calkins from Sotheby's Dallas for helping us put together this wonderful program today and to get to share it online on Zoom. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to get to feel like we are there with you at Sotheby's, with Emily, getting to take a virtual tour, a virtual walkthrough of our highlights. So we will be speaking about a lot of my favorite artists and photographers, and we hope that you all will be inspired to log on and perhaps put in a bid, or if you've got a photograph in the future to sell at Sotheby's as well. So a couple announcements. If you would like, and if you have a question, please put it in the chat feature and or the Q&A, and we will monitor the questions as we go along. And feel free to, like I said, take notes throughout the presentation. We will be pulling up the website at the end of the program as well, and giving you just some other basic knowledge about getting yourself familiarized with the online auctions. So I'm going to pull up our first slide, and I will give a little bio for Emily. Okay, well, Emily Bierman joined Sotheby's Photographs Department in 2007. Emily has been directly involved with the department's numerous important single-owner collections. As head of the department, she is the lead business getter for the department's biannual auctions. Her broad range of activity within the department also includes professional writing, research, and all aspects of the auction estimate, fair market value, charitable donation, and insurance appraisals. Ms. Bierman has lectured on both the history of the photographs market and on contemporary color photography. Ms. Bierman is also a graduate of Middlebury College, Vermont, where she received a Bachelor of Arts degree in the history of art and architecture and in film and media cultures. So it's my pleasure to have Emily here with us.
Well, thank you so much. It is such a treat in this virtual era to be able to bring together like-minded and interested individuals. So thank you for joining us today. I'm going to go through these first couple of slides fairly rapidly, and then we will dive into some highlights from the upcoming auctions at Sotheby's. The photographs market, as some of you know and are now definitely going to learn about, is a relatively young market in the scheme of collecting. It comes out of the books trade as the prints market, and I always love to start any sort of lecture on the market with this slide, which is an engraving that was originally published in 1888, showing a book sale at Sotheby's London, and kind of shows how much things have changed as well as how much they've stayed the same. We have certainly a room full of men, which you wouldn't see a room these days, and you'd see a much more diverse audience. But it's really interesting to think about where we've come from and where we're going. Next year actually marks 50 years of photographs at Sotheby's, so that's monumental for us. And the founding of the photographs department at Sotheby's really does coincide with what we think of as the modern photographs market. Photography has now been around for almost 2 centuries, but as a collecting category, as an investment, per se, it's really within the last several decades. So photographs, to me, and I think you will agree, remain a really attractive and accessible medium for collecting. It is still possible to put together a collection of masterpieces where you might invest the entire sum of what you would put into one contemporary painting. And photography is certainly the most resonant media at this point. We all see photographically, we carry cameras with us, we're inundated with imagery in the form of social media, but the idea of collecting a physical print, that's very, very different. So photography at auction is a great way to both learn about new artists, learn about the history of photography, as well as, ask questions, understand print quality, what makes one work more valuable than another, and photography, or the auction model, has really evolved. You start here with these traditional auctions, a man in the rostrum, and sitting around in a circle, essentially bidding, and it has taken us a long time to move really, really quickly, just within the last year, I would say. So you start here, and then if you go to the next slide, we'll see this is what most people think of when they think of the big auctions. A room full of people, all of the phone bidders lining the banks, auctioneer, millions of dollars being spent. And this, of course, is the traditional model that had been quite popular and quite successful for a very long time. COVID has forced all of us to evolve. And so if you go to the next slide, then this past June, we had a very exciting, essentially a multi-city bidding event where our auctioneer was in London, and then the phone bidding bidders were all over the world, but the specialists were in New York, London, and Hong Kong. And it was truly one of the most remarkable events and experiences, even as a viewer, that I've had since joining Sotheby's. But then, if you go to the next slide, you'll see this is what I think where we really are for the auction market. It is, we've moved into the digital sphere, and collectors are extremely comfortable with it, and it makes the bidding experience, it makes learning about photographs, learning about any art, and acquiring and collecting all that more accessible. So this is just a screen grab from our upcoming sale of contemporary photographs, and shows you exactly what's going to happen when you're bidding. So instead of an auctioneer being on the podium, you're essentially pressing place bid and seeing the bids cycle up. That's just a long way to say we've started from a room of men and we've moved into a very international experience and international collective audience. Now, the reason we're all here today, I hope, is to learn a little bit more about the upcoming photographs that are selling at Sotheby's online in our contemporary photographs and our classic photograph auctions. As Jennifer noted, these are auctions that the bidding has already started. It opened on September 21st, and the bidding closes on October 1st. So I'm just going to bring you through quickly some highlights and some tips and tricks of collecting as demonstrated in a couple of photographs. And I apologize if you can hear any feedback of ambulances. If you know Sotheby's York Avenue, you know we're surrounded by hospitals, and I can only do so much to dampen that noise. So here, I thought I would start with Cindy Sherman. Estimates within the two sales range from the very accessible under 5,000 all the way up to 500,000. And the Cindy Sherman film still, lot number 13, that is the leading lot, the leading photograph for the contemporary sale. Her untitled film stills, which were, it's a series that was made over essentially just 3 short years. This is the defining body of work for which Sherman is really most well known. It is actually, I mean, the scale here is fairly helpful to understand it. Each was originally printed on 8 by 10 sheets of paper, just like real film stills, in a very limited edition of 10. And the images themselves either center on the subject, Sherman, and it's very introspective, or you as a viewer are invited to imagine what's happening outside of the frame, right? So here she's dropped her bag of groceries, or they've fallen and she's surprised. We don't know what the scenario is, and that's, I mean, that's kind of the enjoyment here. We have no clues with titling; they're always untitled, and essentially just numbers. Now, the estimate is 120 to 180,000, and that is, in our opinion, really spot on for the market. We sold a year ago, last October, sort of the companion image for this, and that achieved 300,000, but there's always a real range. But just because these film stills are achieving in the 6-figure range doesn't mean that that is what you have to spend in order to collect a blue chip artist. So I highlight lot 68, which is this Cindy Sherman that essentially was created for a benefit. In 1987, the Men's Council of the Museum of Contemporary Art, Chicago, commissioned Sherman to create a limited edition. I think it was 35, and this is the image that was created for that. The owners are now selling it, and there's a great market for this. We already have active bidding on it, and it kind of shows that you can acquire and collect in both at auction, through galleries, but also potentially through a benefit that might be showing newer work and presenting opportunities at a very attractive price point.
And Emily, I think this is a great example of having a blue chip artist where you've got 2 different examples of their work, but one being at the high end and then one being at the more accessible end. So I certainly think that I'm going to be watching lot 68 because I want to see what also happens and what price it actually sells for, the hammer price. So, but Cindy Sherman's been one of my favorite photographers for years. So there's this mystery behind getting to see her in her face, in her body, in all of these images. So thanks for shedding light for us for these works by Cindy Sherman.
Sure.
So next, we are going to look at one of our press images that I hope everyone enjoyed getting to see, Matthew Brandt, who has actually become one of my photographers that I am looking to. I like to speak about him with clients, and so I was excited to get to see this one included in the sale.
Yeah, we were absolutely delighted at the opportunity to offer this work. It is the first time that a Brandt has come to market at Sotheby's, and it's really a relatively new market, or at least a new market for resale. And auction is generally considered resale. I think the first time his work is coming up at auction is only in 2014, so it's really, really escalated. And I include it here with our sort of mock installation so you can get a sense of the scale. Even though we exist in a digital world, some size does matter. And this photograph packs a huge amount of punch for, I think, a very attractive estimate. And each of these works are unique. So if you love this particular image, you don't wait to see what happens and if another one will come up, because his creative process, essentially, of soaking the prints in the lake water, essentially, of that he's photographed. That is what creates this psychedelic distortion, essentially, and almost degradation of the materials and the color. In person, it is just wildly vibrant and has just this great plasticity to it. We love it. We are hugely obsessed with it, and delighted to have the opportunity to try to bring newer, more contemporary artists into our auction.
And I do think that's the exciting part that I've even asked you personally about, that just, it must be great to get to bring a new artist to auction that's new to Sotheby's and get to see the results. So I think that's a great time for you to test the waters for collectors out there and just to get to introduce his work. So I think his colors are vivid and, as you said, just great scale. And I love, his process is so mechanical and wanting it to be so unique with soaking it in the water. So I think I wish I could be there in person, but we will at the end also reiterate that if anyone wants to see any details of these works, they can contact you for further photographs.
We have a full exhibition, if anyone's in New York, that is opening tomorrow. It's by appointment, but I recognize that very few people, no one's traveling certainly, and very few people might be able to come in. So the world has changed to, we do FaceTime, lots of snapshots over social media or WhatsApp. We try and make it as easy as possible for people to experience it from afar. So this Matlitz is another great surprise. It is almost the debut for the artist at auction. There have been 2 other pieces that have come up, but it's certainly the first that we've had the opportunity to present. And these photographs really first came to my attention maybe a little late. I saw a show at the Getty in 2018, the cut paper play in contemporary photography, and I really loved work. And so here you have, this is from the library series, which is from 2012, 2013. And what he's done is pull images from the Time Life series, Library of Photography from the 1970s. I'm sure some people have it lying around on their bookshelf or in their basement. Pulled out about 500 images, repositioned them, created almost like a museum library aesthetic, rephotographed it, and then printed in this monumental scale. You can't see in this image, but it is a very large photograph. And what I love about it is how fun and reverential it is to the history of photography. You can spend a lot of time picking out the images that you know. So the still life by Irving Penn at the bottom, the top image was by Barbara Morgan. So it's again, it's a lot of fun to get to dissect.
And I think these are sort of full of narrative in themselves, with the idea that he collages and brings these imagery from the past. So I think these types of stories should inspire all of us with collecting, because he is sharing and capturing something really almost that's unique in terms of a almost like a still life, really, in terms of these little narratives. So everyone take a look at lot number 9. Next up, another somewhat fascinating photographer, Louise Lawler, that I always think it does capture still life and also captures imagery of other photographs in itself. So Emily, does this one sort of fit into Louise's repertoire, or would you say this is sort of on its own?
No, I would say this is like spot on for what she's known for, photographing other artists' work in the scenarios in which the work is hung. So in the collector's home, which is likely what this is, in museum settings, even in the exhibitions at auction houses. And I mean, personally, again, I love getting to try and dissect and understand what's happening here. And in the images in the background, we see a number of artists with whom she's also associated. So you have the Richard Prince cowboy, and then you have the diptych of the Prince Sherman self-portrait. So it's both a lot of fun to look at and to examine, and also it is emblematic of a part of her career. And the estimate is, again, very choice, conditions, fantastic.
And next, Annie Leibovitz. And I think I'm glad we get to talk about lot number 42, because this is where we can really look at when the print date is important. So tell us a little bit about how that influences the estimate of a work and how you think it will perform at auction.
So photography is a medium of multiples, and it is not uncommon for artists to revisit their negatives from the beginning of photography, frankly. And so Annie Leibovitz has created, over the course of 40 years, hundreds of iconic images, shooting for Rolling Stone and Vanity Fair. You can all think of images immediately and connect them with her. In 2010, she distilled down what she considered to be her key master set of images, 157 photographs made between 1968 and I think 2009, and she printed them in this limited edition of 10 in a large scale, which you can see here. So this is, this is a portrait that's from, I think, 1988, printed in 2010, so revisited. Now you will have probably seen other prints of this image, but not in this scale. The more normal size is 10 by 10, 15 by 15, her early Cibachrome. And so to see it really, it is very impressive when it is this large. You both have the wall power of the size, but also the image, how it resonates with you, the color, and I think it is very attractively estimated. It's essentially estimated in the same range as an earlier 15 by 15 would be.
And then with this print date of 2010, would you say this still holds value on the market going forward? So,
there's in the contemporary market, I don't see as much of a differentiation between if it's printed at the time of the negative or later, as you are going to see when we talk about what would be like classic or vintage photographs. And here it's a totally different interpretation of the negative. These have been, not this image, we haven't seen a print in this scale of this image come up, but other individual prints from the master set in this size have come to market over the last several years and achieved anywhere from around 10,000 all the way to around 90,000.
Okay, it's great to know. I'm excited to get to talk about William Wegman, because I think there's nothing there. I don't know if I've ever met anyone who hasn't had some kind of a wonderful reaction to seeing William Wegman's work, who is known for including dogs in his photographs. So we're going to take a look at the letters, numbers, and punctuation set. And I think this is such a fun way to inspire either children, if you want to buy work that are going to speak to the next generation of collectors with these dogs. So so Emily, tell us a little bit about when William Wegman started using dogs, photographing dogs, and then particularly this series.
Well, at this point, Wegman is really the dog man, although he definitely didn't set out in that direction. I think he trained as a painter and really starts out in the 1970s as a conceptual artist, both video and photography. His first dog was named Man Ray. The dog we see here is a subsequent dog, Fay Ray, and her pups. And the dog images really, I think, take off around this time of the work he was doing with the Polaroid Corporation. So most of what you see are these 20 by 24 inch colorful, either some of them are very playful, some of the images he dressed up the dogs. But around 1988, I want to say, he also started doing video segments for Sesame Street, and I think came up with the idea to do a full alphabet with the dogs. You can look up the video online. And so what Lot 33 is, this is a full portfolio called Letters, Numbers, Punctuation. You have the full alphabet, you have numbers, you have punctuation. Again, Jennifer, what a great idea to use this as a teaching tool in this stay-at-home schooling, or to be able to frame up all of these images for a kid's room. But really, what I really like to point out is portfolios are also a really great way to acquire a number of works by a photographer for a relatively modest amount. So you can, depending upon what the portfolio is, you really can get a great survey of some of the best examples that a photographer made. The editions tend to be a little bit larger than in individual prints, but they're really great opportunities, especially for beginning collecting.
I think that that's a great way to say this is a perfect piece for beginning to collect right here, and you get so much value for getting the series, getting the portfolio together. So check out William Wegman, lot number 33. Mm-hmm. We will go on to look at Vic Muniz, and
this is amazing.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about, this is amazing. I imagine it's even when you see it in person to get to see the great details. So he has used little tiny toys. He's photographed tiny toys that make up this composition.
That's right, and it is extremely vibrant and colorful in real life. So Muniz is a Brazilian artist who is incredibly prolific and has really, there's no series that isn't creative and doesn't spark conversation and that you don't want to have hanging on your wall, frankly. Here we have, as you said, Jennifer, teeny tiny little toys that have been laid out in this form of a very well-known iconic image of Alice Liddell taken by Lewis Carroll. So again, another photograph for another photographer who is looking to other artists' work and incorporating that imagery and questioning, to an extent, visual representation. Muniz is an artist who shows up on the auction market with great frequency, and again, many different types of series. There's the chocolate series, diamond, pigment, puzzle. We have a couple of different Muniz photographs in our current sale. So there's really something for everyone. And with this one, the scale is what I think makes it most impressive. At framed, it's about 100 inches high. So you really can get lost looking at it.
And gosh, what great visual impact at 100 inches. You're really almost in the composition, you're looking in the toys. So, and speaking of scale as well, we've got another large scale by Richard Misrick. I've been taken by his work ever since I saw it in person quite a few years ago, and I think something about it, seeing the landscape, whether it be a landscape or water like this, you really do feel like you're in the composition. So tell us a little bit about lot number 23.
These monumental, he's known for these monumental, vast expanses, essentially. And these, what I like to point out about these photographs, the impact is not only the scale, and it's not the subject and sort of the vulnerability of these unassuming subjects, just floating in this vast ocean or on an empty beach, but it's also the very real life saturation of the print, the color. And this is, I think, a great opportunity to talk about the care of color photography. Photographs, whether it is something that you're acquiring that's a couple $100s or hundreds of thousands of dollars, you should love anything that you acquire, live with it, absolutely. I'm a huge proponent of that, and not just storing, but you should also treat the photographs with respect and make sure that you are taking care of your investment. The color photography in particular, it can be vulnerable and can be vulnerable to fading, and a faded Mizrak would look nothing like this. So just like you don't like to sit in the sun and get a sunburn, don't hang your color photographs in front of blinding light, no direct light. Like you don't like humidity for your hair, don't put color photographs or really any photographs in a humid environment, say in a bathroom or a kitchen. And then the glazing, again, making sure that if it is glass or plexi, that it is treated with some sort of UV protection. So the longevity of your photograph is important when you're thinking about acquiring something for $50,000 to $70,000, but you should absolutely be enjoying it.
And I think that living with art is the best way to appreciate art. And so, yes, but living with art does take some responsibility. So it's a good thing to consider the condition of where you are placing work and in your house, and it will certainly keep the longevity and value of the work. So you really, because I imagine, do you see work that is presented to you that maybe is not in good condition? And
condition is always a component of our valuation and our understanding of the work. So when you write to me or call me or I visit you, we're always taking that into account. And with contemporary photography, you can find some photographers who will be willing to reprint if something has faded or has been marred in some way, but many and most photographers will not. And certainly when you get to vintage classic photography, those artists are probably dead. So condition absolutely can play a huge role in what the valuation would be and what you should expect today.
In what you should expect. Well, we've now reached our last one in the contemporary photographs our section that we're going to speak about until we get to the end when we get back to the website. But I was particularly taken by this Ahmet Ertuğ piece that is included. And I believe there are two in the sale by him.
There are, yes. The other one is a library.
The other one is the library, I believe, in Boston. And then I particularly had a moment because I happened to feel like I am truly standing in the Palazzo Colonna when I was there a year ago. So I think it's a nice example of how everyone can react very personally to these scenes of interiors and architecture. And I actually see this one as capturing this Palazzo Colonna interior at a certain time period as well here when he took the photograph, but also how we look at history, that this interior still does exist. So this is one of the finest collections in Italy, finest collections of art in Italy. And many of you may recognize this, this interior is where Roman Holiday was filmed, and Audrey Hepburn and Gregory Peck stand literally on the steps that we're situated on with this vista down the hallway. So I think you see the grandeur, but you also can respect history. So I personally would love, this would be the one I would bid on.
This is a perfect response
today.
To a photograph. Wow.
Today. So, and then with Ahmet's work, he's been, have you seen much over the course of his work at auction, or would you say he's?
Again, relatively recent to market. I think we first offered a different image last season, but he is an artist who has been working for quite a long time. He studied architecture, and I think you really can see in all of his photographs the architectural perspective. Everything, all of the images have this great sense of leading you into the image. You could just essentially walk in, and they are very large scale, so you literally do feel like you could enter the image. And that is what I think part of what makes these images so powerful. And he's not the only photographer, certainly, who is practicing in that way, but they are very effective.
And I do think and this would be another example of living with the piece and having it in an interior, or you do look at it within a space. It's just like architecture within architecture, and you're really getting that sense from the photographs. So yes, so take a look at lot number 71. So now in our next little section, we will give a quick overview of some of the key photographers that really embody the history of photography. We're looking at art history here. We're looking at photographers that have played a key role in the evolution of photography over the course of its existence, I would say. So with Helmut Newton, how do you think, and how do you fit in with Helmut Newton being at the high end of the market, but really capturing this beautiful, provocative, this imagery of history?
And this is one of the two top lots of the classic sale, which really ranges, frankly, from 19th century through to mid to late 20th century work. There is no photographer who captures strong female sexiness like Helmut Newton, frankly. This is an incredible image shot for Vogue, very, very powerful in this large size, which again is why we're showing it sort of mocked up in situ, so you can get a sense of its scale. But Newton's not an artist that only exists in the six figures. There's a whole range of pricing and of images, and if you love Newton, there is definitely a Newton for you. This particular work merits this estimate because it is an iconic image. It is a limited edition of 3. It rarely comes to market. I think the last one sold in 2017 for just shy of 450,000. So there's certainly the precedent. And then you think that the overall auction market for Helmut Newton was reset just last year for a very different work, but at $1.8 million. So it is an artist that certainly appreciates, and there's something I've always found them just very playful. You never feel like the subject was taken advantage of. He just has this reverential perspective of women. And I'll note that 2020 is the centenary for Newton, so there's a lot of attention on the artist right now, including a very interesting new documentary.
Well, I think that Helmut Newton, through his editorial work and fine art work, will just forever capture this moment in time of within this bigger realm of what we would see as fashion photography. Okay, Diane Arbus, lot number 9.
Yes.
And I love that you've included off to the side the signed part of the back. So right, we're looking at the back. So tell us a little bit about what we see, the documentation and the signatures on photographs.
So this is the other top lot of the sale at 300 to 500,000, and I include in this next section of our slides a number of backs, because the back to me is sometimes just as interesting as the front. And for you as a collector, you should be looking at not only the image quality, the print quality, what's happening on the front, but also the information that you might be able to glean about the back. So this is a really terrific print of the image, but not only is it a great print in excellent condition, but it is lifetime, and not only lifetime, it is signed, inscribed, it has all of the bells and whistles that you would want, which you can vaguely make out in the image to the right. Lifetime, any of Arbus's lifetime prints are really pretty rare. What you most often see and what you might have been offered even are mostly the posthumous prints that are printed by Neil Selkirk in mostly in an edition of 75. Lifetime, again, much harder to find, and finding one with a signature of like a top 5, top 10 image for the artist feels nearly impossible. So in the last 2 decades, if not more, the only one other signed example has come to market. And that set the record for the image in 2008 at 553,000. Now, this photograph, this factory photograph, sold at Sotheby's in 2004 and achieved 232,000. So I think we are very reasonable. But again, Arbus is an artist that has certainly seen great appreciation and great appreciation of investment. The idea that you have to only get or you can only get a lifetime print, I mean, you can get a later print, those editions that we were talking about earlier, and the price there is going to be quite different, knocking off a zero.
Yeah. So you would say that Diane Arbus still presents collecting opportunities at lower price points.
Absolutely. And I feel like this, I mean, when I got the call about this photograph, I did a double take because I certainly remembered it from when it was offered previously and was very familiar with the cataloging for it. And then when I saw it in person, it's just such a good print. And again, to have the opportunity to have the artist's hand, if that's important to you, then this is amazing and rare opportunity.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is something you don't see often.
Exactly.
So this is a key moment. Okay, Dorothea Lange, and I think, and yet again, another, as we transitioned to this idea, another lot where Dorothea Lange is in every history book and is in every, she's really taught throughout many art historians, but what we see is a variety of estimates or price points. So I was actually surprised with this sort of what I seemed as a lower estimate.
Well, with Lange's been having a real moment recently, which is great. We have offered over the last couple of auctions a number of Dorothea Lange photographs that have really performed quite strongly. But what this is it's a key known image, but it is if you see it in person, it's a larger print than you're used to. And the dating of it is later than you would be used to. So Lange was preparing for a retrospective right before she dies in the fall of 1965. The retrospective at MoMA opens in 66, but she was printing or having printed under her supervision a whole series of images. They made 2 sets of prints. One that was exhibited at MoMA, one that was then kept by MoMA, and then was later deaccessioned. So the crop marks on this print, which if you saw it in person or asked for an image, you would see, those are the original crop marks that was Lange's intention for how the photograph essentially should be cropped or formatted and mounted. And this was a photograph that was deaccessioned in around 2003. So you have a large print, a kind of very cool provenance and history for it, but later print, and all of those elements weigh into what the estimate is going to be. And Lang is one of those artists, we were talking about this yesterday, where dating of Dorothea Lange photographs is notoriously difficult because, again, she does revisit her negatives throughout her career, and the paper can be a helpful sign as to what the dating is, but sometimes you're not sure. So always questions, but that's what makes learning about photography and learning about the history of photography so much fun, and we're always kept on our toes.
And always kept on your toes, and new discoveries each
Yeah.
time, or
Mm-hmm.
in tracing what you've known in the past, and then maybe seeing something come to light, or that hadn't been seen before. But I do like the story about MoMA and how this one was very much part of the exhibition, and this was, we see this during artist careers and who have participated in big retrospectives of their work. So
I mean, all museums have great websites, or they're building great websites now, but the MoMA website's fantastic because they have all of their checklists online for free to view, as well as installation images. And in the course of our research, I was able to look and find where a print of this image was actually exhibited.
see, that's amazing. That's the piece of a puzzle that you're looking for that's so helpful. So. And so Robert Frank, and here's another example of seeing the image here in the middle, and then we see the back, and this one is mounted on masonite. And so do you see that often with Robert Frank's work?
You don't see it that often, but you would see it for anything from this period that is essentially exhibition mounted. So Frank is best known, who just recently passed, obviously best known for his seminal series, The Americans, 83 images cross-section of America, first published in France in 1958 and in the States in 1959. This is an image that is from 1961, so it's after the American series. And it's larger than you're also used to seeing. It is mounted to masonite, and if you can kind of make out, there are exhibition labels on the back. It was shown and probably printed for, frankly, a 1962 show that opened at the Museum of Modern Art. It was Robert Frank and Harry Callahan. It then traveled for several years, and all of that history is on these labels. That's your first clue. If you see that there are little abrasions in the upper corners on the back, that's where there would have been essentially hanging tabs. And the original way that it would have been installed would have been unframed, unglazed, just photograph, thick object, because it is mounted to sturdy masonite on the wall. And now, of course, in our exhibition, we have it matted and framed, but it's so interesting to think about how the object and how we treat the photograph has evolved. Obviously, now we are quite precious because there is significant value that can often be associated with these photographs. And then I'll also note, it is, I mean, we have a signature on the back. So again, looking at the front, but also looking at the back is always incredibly important. And we play history detective here, but so should you anytime that you are looking at acquiring a photograph. Always ask to see the back.
And you can, and feel free to always ask questions to the specialist or in the department.
We love questions.
You all, and I will say that's what you know. You at Sotheby's, you want you can answer the questions, and that's what I love. I learn so much also from you, and whenever I'm presenting work or showing it to clients as well. So I actually love to ask questions. So
Thank you.
It's a great, and we're a good team. So am glad to include another example of two works by the same photographer, well-known Edward Weston. And it's it's so synonymous to see these images of the dunes here, and you can see already somewhat instantly see the difference between the two. But I noticed also first off with the signature on this one on number lot 76, and this one at least not seeing it here on the screen. So can you place these two into context with us?
So they're essentially both emblematic of Weston's Dune series, 1936 or so, and they're both probably on very similar paper, but the photograph on the left, the wind erosion, lot 76, this is the definitive ideal version presentation for how the photograph should look from this period if it's a print from around the time of the negative. It's mounted to slick whiteboard. It's got this full signature and date in pencil. It's titled on the back. It is a full finished object. And the estimate certainly, it reflects that dunes, and depending upon what dune, because there are many dunes, manned anywhere from say 70,000 to 400,000. The photograph on the right is a beautiful print of a very well-known and sort of desirable dune, what we might call the Black Dune, but it's not mounted. It's signed on the back, but it doesn't have that finished object quality, and it's probably from slightly later than the print that's on the left. So you have object and certainly condition, but object playing a part into the finished valuation. And you always want to keep in mind what's important to you. The image, the best possible example, the object. With Weston, you can also acquire works that were posthumous, that were printed by his son Cole, and that's going to be in a whole different price point, probably anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000.
And I think that these will be another two that I will look forward to following just to see. But I will say, even with the lot 50, and I think we spoke about this, this is still a great investment piece.
Absolutely,
It would be a great piece, hold value.
Weston was the first photographer at auction to break the $100,000 mark in, I want to say, 1989. I know we're recording this, and so it'll live on forever if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's right.
We'll hope that's it's probably exactly right. So without this program today, I thought we couldn't go without speaking about Ansel Adams. And I think for most people, if you stopped anybody on the street and asked them to name a photographer, there's a pretty good chance that someone would say Ansel Adams, and maybe even be able to reference this photograph. So I think, so let's take a look at lot 67, the Clearing Winter Storm, Yosemite National Park, California.
Yeah, so we are absolutely thrilled to have an early print of this defining image. Again, Jennifer, I totally agree that if there's one name that's synonymous with American photography, you probably would name Ansel Adams. And Clearing Winter Storm is, if not the most well-known image, one of the top most well-known images for him. The record at auction for Adams, so the overall highest price achieved, was for a print of this image on a monumental scale, mural-sized print that sold in 2010 here at Sotheby's for $722,500. So with Adams, you have any number of factors that go into both your appreciation, but also the valuation. The image, where it fits into the body of work, the age of the print, and the size of the print. So here we have the image is from the late 1930s, and we have a print that we believe to be probably from the early 1940s. And we know that through some very nerdy and dorky science that goes into helping us date. But you also can, just by looking at it and looking at a later print, really see an evolution. So on the right, we have what you most often see, which is a print that was from the mid to late 1970s. And we're getting a totally different interpretation of the negative. Whereas in this early print, it is very, I mean, I think you said very inviting, very atmospheric. You really get a sense of the environment. It's a great meditation on these midtones. The later prints, which are selenium toned and have these really inky blacks, really, it's his evolution towards a much more dramatic printing style. And that's what you would most often see on the market.
So once again, this is such a rare
opportunity.
This is such a rare opportunity to see this, and very exciting. So, and I think this is very helpful to get to see just the difference of the nuances in the printing from the very early to the later, to the 1970s. And you can really sort of still tell the difference. It's still, of course, the same photographer, but there's just an evolution in his style and career.
Well, yes, over the course of several decades, his style does evolve.
So lot number 73, Alfred Stieglitz, another one that has a great story behind it, and also a very well-known image, sort of an iconic image. I call these just, like I said, almost art history moments.
So because it is so iconic, very little needs to be said that hasn't been said about this photograph. The image itself is from 1907. What is remarkable about this particular example is that it is signed, and it's not only signed once, it's signed twice, stamped. It has all of these, again, these extra bells and whistles, if you will. And if we were just, when I first got the inquiry for this, and I went on a visit and saw the photograph framed, all of that was hidden. So you turn the frame over, as we do, and sometimes you can learn a lot about the photograph from what's on the back. So we always are also checking the back of frames. And here the framer was kind enough to adhere to little snapshots of the signatures that are hiding underneath the mat. And we also have a provenance label, which again can help us chart the history of a photograph, because with the earlier the photograph, the more owners it potentially has had. And you don't always know how to trace that, but where we can chart it, it is very helpful.
And I think that's nice when you see these elements included on the back, and then also, like we said, with the provenance or the history of the piece is really going to tell you more about the life of the piece. And certainly provenance can influence the work on the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Well. I think, I mean, when we were talking about the photograph that was a deaccession from a museum that has even if it's never been exhibited, that has a certain element to it. If it's coming from an important collection or from the artist themselves or from the estate, knowing what the history is definitely is certainly important to our job and should be important to collectors.
And I think that, the more we look at objects and the variety of subject matter as well, leading here into Irving Penn, we have Irving Penn really known for his fashion photography and editorial work, but I love this story behind when he went to CUZCO and decided to set up his own little studio and capture the local women. So tell us a little bit about how this places this work into his bigger context.
Yeah, so this we do tend to think about, well, Penn had a very diverse and was career and was quite prolific. But when we do tend to think about Penn, we think about the black and white Vogue cover, many, many Vogue covers, and this is somewhat different, but also not. You can still see the same command of dealing with texture and with the weight of the fabric. It is not it was a series of images that he was making of his own accord, not on assignment. He'd been sent down to Lima, Peru as a fashion assignment, and ultimately stays behind, rents a studio locally in Cuzco, and over the course of 3 days makes some of the most unforgettable images. For me, what is beyond just the story behind it and the fact that it is a really terrific portrait, it's the print quality. So Penn, platinum, palladium prints are just absolutely extraordinary and rich. Penn's platinum printing is some of the best. So you can see it's very hard to understand it from this slideshow, but I think it's slightly clearer when you look at it on the website or in our galleries. I mean, Penn prints in platinum, gelatin silver, dye transfer, Chrome, and generally speaking, all of those prints are exceptional quality.
And I think that, like we said, it's really actually very personal and telling when you get to see a photographer's work like this that's outside their editorial realm. Yep. So this was on his own, and I mean, we saw that even with Herb Ritz, who did his Africa series, that I think highlights this element of it. But I think this one really speaks volumes. So I encourage everybody to go onto the website, and you can see also the an installation photo to see how large this one is too, but you said with the print quality. So now we are on to our last slide, and then we'll we'll go to the website briefly and take any questions. So we're going to talk about lot number 99 as our last slide, Henri Cartier-Bresson.
I think that it's hard to talk about the photographs market or the modern photographs market without mentioning Cartier-Bresson, who is beloved amongst collectors and really is a very reliable photographer in terms of maintaining and holding value. The images are they just continue to just resonate quite deeply, and there's hard to find a bad Cartier-Bresson, or at least a bad one that's coming to auction market. This is the definitive sort of later presentation, again, revisiting his negative once there's a market and a demand, signed in the margin, and it's just a very affecting image. And I would, again, fully expect that this photograph goes either within its estimate or maybe above.
I actually told myself this would be just the solid purchase of any of them in the two that I would go for, because it's such a well-known photographer, but I think it's an accessible price point, and we are talking about this idea that photography is accessible and it really does hold value. So I think this would be just a solid decision, solid purchase. So we are going to wrap up now. If you have any questions, we're going to go to the website shortly, but if you do have any questions, I've included all of our email addresses here today for Emily and also Charlie. And thank you again for Charlie, who helped put this together. Hi, Charlie.
Hi,
Hey guys, thank you. That was great. So insightful.
That was a lot of fun.
Well, this was great. I think it's always so nice to come together. Like I said, I always learn so much from you all, and then it really is this storytelling that helps all of us understand art better. And I think education and learning about art is so key, because it actually helps you remember these artists and these photographers, and you create a memory. And then maybe the next time we all are together in museums and going to auction houses and previews, you will get to see and recognize some of these. So I hope that we inspired you today by covering some of the key lots, but also some of the new photographers that you may have not heard of before. So I'm going to transition back to the website and we will answer some questions as well. We had a question about Brandt's work, Emily, and let me pull up the chat again. If the work was, pull up.
I believe it is literally soaked in the lake water, and sometimes he leaves the physical print soaking for even a couple of days. And I was reading an interview with him recently where he said he never can predict essentially what the outcome is going to be. They're all surprises.
So he creates the print and then puts the whole thing.
It's submerged, yeah.
Wow, okay.
And so the effect of the change of coloration and almost the degradation and decay is intrinsic to the processing. So you are on our website right now. You've gone to Sotheby's.com.
We've gone to Sotheby's. We are here at the homepage.
We're here at the homepage.
I want to sort of walk through what anybody would need to do in case you haven't bought or bid online before. I actually find it to be quite easy. So I'm here to tell you that once you set up your free account and you get your email registered, you will then see yourself logged in up in the corner. And so there's a nice little overview here on the website. I liked this thematic breakdown. So here are several that we did talk about today, Matthew Brandt and Richard Misrak, and then our interiors section. So I think you can explore in various ways, and also subject self-portraiture with Cindy Sherman. So once we click on one, we'll go to Louise Lawler.
So the digital catalog has taken the place in most instances of the traditional hard copy catalog that's been mailed. Most of our collectors' clients are international, traveling around, and the ease of just pulling something up on your computer or on your iPad really far supersedes the appeal of receiving a book add to your library that's probably already bursting with auction catalogs. And on our website, again, you click in, learn about a lot. We have really, great imagery. You can zoom in, you can see here the signed label on the back, and then you can see it in a mock installation. We tend to use the same mock installation for many of our works, but it does give you a sense of scale. And then you just click the little X in the upper right corner to get out.
I was going to say, oh, there's the X. I'm kidding. I don't want to make anyone seasick here. We get to take it out from the detail, and then here is your installation shot of that you can see in relation to how to.
And actually, it's an installation shot in our old galleries, which are totally revamped, enlarged, and absolutely gorgeous. So you have full cataloging, provenance, condition report. You don't have to log in to see it is available. I know on some other sites you do have to log in. We make everything transparent so you can understand the object. You can absolutely still call or write to us, but we try and put forward the best information that we can to start with. And then when you are ready to think about bidding, you either can follow the lot and you'll be updated, or you would essentially click to place a bid. And then when you place a bid, the next screen, I don't think we'll be automatically placing a bid.
I was
here
just
yet.
going to say,
So,
I was sort of taking on the risk.
Don't worry, Jennifer.
Sort of taking on the risk with you all here on the line, but this is an exciting. I like to say, even any time I even get on your website like this, I get excited and almost nervous, as if we were in an auction room and and your hand goes up. So
that's what it feels like to me too.
So. It's very easy. All we did was say place bid, and then
you would either place your the next incremental bid, or you would place a maximum bid. So essentially, if you wanted to set it and forget it, you'd figure out what the maximum amount was that you wanted to spend, and then the computer would just execute on your behalf. If you do get outbid, you are notified by email, and then if you've downloaded our app, which I highly recommend, I'm on our app all the time, you would get a notification in the app. And the thing, sorry.
I was just going to say, just to take one step back, that the format of this auction is different than your typical live auction, right? So right now it's open for bidding, and it'll be open for bidding through October 1st. And then at a certain time, I think it's 9 a.m. Central, right? They start to close on a rolling basis. So every minute a different lot changes. If there's active bidding on a lot, it'll automatically extend by 2 minutes to give people time to bid. So there's no, crazy sniping and all that sort of thing going on. So it's a very well-oiled machine, user-friendly once you've done it a few times. And yeah, I mean, it's exciting.
It is exciting. My palms are always sweating as an auction's occurring.
And it is exciting, and I think that, especially once you get towards the end, I like that there is a delay, because you have 2 minutes to decide to get to the, and it extends the bid. So I think even in real life time with technology, I think that's nice, and that helps it, because we're not there in a live auction. But so online is slightly different, like we just said, from the live auctions, but that actually still has that built-in layer to
it very much mirrors and mimics the experience in an auction room, frankly. And it is live because it is closing live. There's just not a person in a podium directing the bids.
And if you've never bid with Sotheby's before, I would give yourself maybe a day or two before it closes to get that all ironed out. It's very straightforward, but you don't want to get stuck with a technicality of driver's license not uploading or something like that a few hours before the sale. And of course, any of us are available to walk you through the process and talk about it in more depth if you need it.
So something that we haven't mentioned, unless there are any questions, is the idea of what the minimum selling price is. So we always are going to see at auction a range of estimates, low estimate and a high estimate, and maybe something sells below the estimate, in between, or above. The magic of auction, because anything can really happen. Unless otherwise stated in the cataloging, everything is sold subject to a reserve. Reserve being the lowest price at which a lot will sell. And where it is noted that a lot is selling at no reserve, the bidding literally starts at $1. And those tend to be very exciting, frankly, because the bidding gets very active and quite a frenzy. But that's just to say there's a huge range of price points in any given auction, but certainly within both of these photographs auctions.
And here is right underneath the current bid, it says 7 bids, and then the reserve is met, reserve met.
So we know that this work already, days out from selling, 5 days and 19 hours, is certainly met its reserve and is at least going to sell. But I would expect that the bidding is going to continue on this. There'll be some active bidders that last it's
morning.
A very special case.
Well, let's see if we have any more questions, and if not, I think we will wrap up. And I think this has been such a nice introduction to the 2 sales, the contemporary photographs and the classic photographs. And if anyone does have any questions, like I said, feel free to email any 3 of us. I will be sending this out, the link to this video, so you will have it for everyone who registered, and we will also be posting this to YouTube as well. So if you do want to watch this again, and
we do have a question.
Oh,
we have a good question. They're all good questions, but I love this question.
Okay, great. Actually, so we have a question about the care and maintenance. Could you go through a little bit more detail on the care of maintenance, and particularly for older photographs? Do you recommend resting photographs and putting them in low light or no light?
Thank you for thinking about this. Direct light, we generally, for any any photograph, be it contemporary or older, more classic vintage photographs, we're never going to recommend. The paper is living and breathing and can shift, can change. The idea of resting a photograph, of not having it constantly hung in your home, and of rotating your collection is a good one. And certainly if they can, it's recommended. That is a great way to, again, preserve the longevity of that photograph. Low light, I would just say non-direct light. It's hard to, unless you are only living in a bat cave, it's very hard to have no light in your home, but no direct light. And if you do have some indirect light that is harsh, yes, swap out your photographs as your collection is growing.
And this is a silly question, but is sunlight the same as like a light bulb? Like, is light for a photograph? It doesn't really matter what the source is?
All light is going to have an effect at some point. Absolutely. And a hot spotlight on a photograph is not going to be a great thing either.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and that's a great question. Is just because, like we've said, condition really does help protect your investment with photography. So going forward. So that was a great question. Any other questions? Looks like so if you do think of anything, certainly let any of us know, the three of us. And thank you again to everyone for coming to my webinar, Collector House Classroom. I decided that during this pandemic and the way our lives have changed, connecting on Zoom and getting to share these conversations is so important for now that we can connect with anyone around the world. And I think Emily's proving that today. We've had a great discussion where we can all connect from all over and get to feel like we walked through the preview with you there in New York. But if you are in New York, you get a chance to see some of the photographs, make an appointment with Emily or reach out with Charlie here if you've got more questions about how to place a bid and or get registered with Sotheby's. So thank you so much to Emily for your expertise today and sharing your knowledge. Like I said, I always learn so much from you, and I just appreciate your participation today. And thank you, Charlie, for putting together this lovely program. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks for joining.